Good morning. Dr. Ben Newman. I'm a coronavirus researcher with 26 years experience now, working on these viruses. So next question is from Tim. How you doing? Let's see. Okay, and so Tim's question is a spicy one. All right. In the now viral January 2nd episode of Face the Nation, Dr. Scott Gottlieb makes the assertion that Omicron is less virulent. Less virulent. Hmm. Contradicted by Dr. Ben. No, actually, contradicted by a very large paper that I brought to your attention. Yeah, that's the thing with science. It's not like a he said, she said, and whoever shouts the loudest is right. There are things you can test, and you either have the data or you don't. And I don't think Dr. Scott Gottlieb has either. He's a politically well connected. He used to be something really big at the FDA, if I remember right, and now he is on like boards of investors at several big pharmas, including let's see, Illumina, which does a lot of the sequencing stuff. Yeah, I like their products. I have no idea about their corporate structure. And also Pfizer. So he's not a vaccine inventor. He's not I'm not even sure that he is a practicing MD anymore. I think he's a person who got an MD and then went sort of the political managerial route. And yeah, that's fine. But it's not a person who would necessarily, through their work, have a very detailed, intuitive understanding of anything to do with a virus, or a person whose daily work would necessarily force them to stay up to date on the latest developments with the virus. Yeah, that's I don't know if that's hedging or if that's foreshadowing. So the question goes on. Um, Adds that Omicron leads to upper and lower airway infections, which is of great concern with toddlers. Great concern with everybody, I think, if it was true, but we'll get to that in a sec. What does Dr. Ben think about that? Yeah, sure, happy to help. So, the what I've noticed is when you're talking about people who are really high up, like even sometimes when the CDC is saying things, they tend to be a couple days behind whatever is actually released public science. What are you doing, dog? At the time. And I think these are busy people and they have people to do their reading for them and bring them stuff. And I don't think they have meetings with these people every single day. And I think some of this stuff, like some of these press appearances, may take a couple days to put together and arrange and get everything right. And so it tends to be a little slow moving, a little behind things. Now, this is just a person who is, on television saying the things that are in his heart, and good for him for that. But they're contradicted by the majority of the data that we have so far. So, yeah, I don't think that's very good. But the second part of that, which is the upper respiratory versus lower respiratory, we started to hear a lot about that around mid-December. It comes from a press release. It's like a university publication, not a real thing, but they have actual scientific data in there. But it's not written in a way where you can examine like how they did the tests and exactly what's going on here. It's just like bar graphs that you can more or less interpret, but you gotta sort of fill in some of the blanks from guesswork. It's from Hong Kong University, 15th December 2021. As a fellow called Dr. Let's see, Chen. Yeah, Michael Chen Chi Y. There we go. I've got it open on another tab over here. And so what they do is they take little chunks of basically dead guy lung and dead guy throat, yeah, bronchial tissue. And so they have these little explants. So it has all the cells there. And what you'd normally do in a science lab is you would take those cells, you would break them up into individual cells, and you can set them on a dish and they will kind of reorganize themselves into all the different layers you would find in that organ. And they'll even start making a little film of mucus over the top. It's really cool. But what he's doing is actually working with actual chunks, taken from a person who was formerly living, And then you can try to infect those, and it's okay. But the problem comes with the data. So the conclusion on the top of one of the graphs reads Omicron 70 times greater than Delta. That is the conclusion that everybody picked up on. But you look at the bars, and Omicron is growing, let's see, to about 10 to the fourth infectious units. He's doing the same kind of test that I would do, called a TCID50. That's really low. Like when I put a virus on cells that it does not like there's a kind of cell called 293T ACE2. Our viruses do not like the version of that cell that I was able to get. And that's about how much I get there. And the cells don't really get sick. And the cells, it's just, it's basically what I would call a failed experiment. Normally, when you infect cells in a dish, you can expect between 10 to the 6th, which is a million per milliliter, and 10 to the 7th, which is 10 million per milliliter, live viruses. And you'll get about 3,000 times as much total virus released, because our way of detecting live viruses is still ridiculously inefficient compared to the way they work in reality. We just have a hard time with the lab models to recover all the virus that is there. So we can only read out about a 3,000th of the virus that's there. Anyway, so they have, and they're comparing it to something that grew at 100 plaque-forming units per mil. That's about the amount that you get just left behind. If you put some virus on, and some of it'll settle in little nooks and crannies. And if you check a couple days later, even if it didn't infect at all, you can get about that much virus back off. It just, a little bit of it hangs around. And we're talking about tiny, tiny amounts, like 100 per milliliter in a dish that might have, 2 or 3 milliliters in it. It's, real small numbers, but detectable, thanks to modern science. So anyway, they've got, they're doing that in the lung, in the bronchus. And in the bronchus, they show that the amount of virus that comes out at 24 hours, which is really early. Usually you only get a little fraction of your total virus out after 24 hours, but they show that that's about the same as the amount of virus you get out at 48 hours, which is normally your peak in cell culture. And that doesn't quite ring true. That looks like, I don't know, it looks like just a maybe not terribly well done or controlled experiment, or a problem with the experimental system. I'm not sure that would be reproducible, and I'm not sure they got much infection at all. The other thing to look at is, right next to it, there's a graph of how well the virus grows in the lung. And it shows that, Omicron is worse at growing in the lung, which, I don't know, but only slightly. But again, they're able to only, instead of getting 10 to the 4th, which is, 10,000 viruses out, they're only able to get it to grow to about 10 to the 3rd in the lung. And you should be doing at least 1,000, maybe 10,000 times as much virus from an actual productive infection, or from real life if you get infected in the lung. So something went wrong with the test. Anyway, it's a long way of explaining that the test that he is quoting is one that I don't find particularly believable, because it does not look like what you would get with an actual infection. And it's not just that they tested Omicron in here. They also tested Delta, which grows really well, in cell culture and in both those tissues. And they tested the original version, which also grows really well. None of the findings essentially make sense, and it looks like just sort of low-level noise. But if you were to only read a press briefing, you know how people tend, not dumb it down, but tend to condense things, these executive summaries. If you were to only read an executive summary of this, or maybe see a news headline, I can see why that's what you would think. But overall, I think if you're going to go on national television and tell people things that you're not sure about and haven't really read and haven't been able to analyze in a kind of a basic, common sense sort of way, I think that's kind of irresponsible. And I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know. There may be circumstances. Maybe he was being forced to go on television once again. Who can say? It's not good advice, and it's not wrong because I say it's wrong. It's wrong because there's no evidence that it's right, and there's good evidence that it's not right. And as evidence changes, we will have to update that, because that's what science is. It's not a fixed thing that always stays the same. It is the ever accumulating pile of human data, human generated data, that kind of tells us what we know. So there you go. Thanks very much. This has been Ask Dr. Ben.